Hello and welcome to our webinar. My name is Wendy Epperson. I'm the Customer Account Manager here at Njevity. Today we are looking at our PowerGP Online functionality. Some of the, we're just going to go over what we've added, included in PowerGP Online, and just if you are not in our PowerGP Online cloud, then these features are not available for you. So these are only available in our PowerGP Online cloud. In our PowerGP Online cloud, they are included for free, so that's nice. The functionality is there and you can use it, but if you're not in our cloud, these won't be available for you. With that in mind, our mission at Njevity is to improve the life and success of our customers and partners by providing exceptional business application experiences that simplify, inform, and delight. So I'm going to show you some of these business applications that we've created, and hopefully we will inform you, and if we're really lucky, delight you. With that, we have a lot to cover today. PowerGP Protect, our modified windows. We have our own area page, a batch reset tool, multidimensional analysis budgets. We've got PowerGP Import, PowerGP Banking, PowerGP Connect, our backup manager and data usage viewer. I want to touch on our log off button, and I think we're going to skip the online portal today, and then we will talk a little bit about the ISV products. So first of all, in our PowerGP Online world, we do a lot to keep you secure. So behind the scenes, you don't see any of these things happening, but they are included. And behind the scenes, we have anti-malware running. We hire white hat hackers to come in and try and hack into our system so that we can keep ahead of the bad actors that might try and get in. We have dark web monitoring, we have security patches, and we have MFA required for all admin users, and we are getting ready to roll that out for all users. So if you're not already using multi-factor authentication, you will be using it in the very near future. We also have backup and disaster recovery plans. So we do daily backups. We take our backups off-site. We have backup validation we do on a regular basis to make sure those backups are good and accessible and ready to run. And then Iron Mountain is our cloud. That is a private cloud that we use so that we know we have more control over it, and they have all of their own security provisions as well. And then we have redundancy. So what that means is all of the pieces of equipment that make it possible to get to your GP data in our PowerGP Online cloud have duplication. So if something goes wrong with one of our firewalls, we have another one in place and it just auto switches over to the new firewall. Same thing with our switches, our disks, our physical servers, our gateways. Everything we have has a duplicate that auto hot swaps if we have a problem to minimize any downtime that you might have. Okay, now let's start talking about our PowerGP Online functionality. First is modified windows. So I've got an example here of the GL transaction entry window, and we'll look at a lot of these, but I bring this one up because one of the customizations that we've done or modifications that we've done along the way for almost every window that is involved in distributions, we've added the description next to the account. So in native GP windows, you type the account in, you type in the debit credit, and then if you want to see the description of the account, you have to expand to a multi-line view. In our world, we put the description right next to the account number so that it's easy to see what you're coding your transactions to. This is true in a GL transaction entry window, the payables distribution window, receivables distribution window, inventory distribution windows, sales transaction distribution windows, all of the ones where you would do a big bunch of GL coding. Another common thing you will see on our modified windows is this import button. So we have built PowerGP Import, we'll talk about it later. But anywhere that we've built an import button, almost anywhere, almost any window that we've built an import for will have an import button at the top of that window, so you can easily use that import functionality to bring right into that window. In the sales transaction entry window, not only did we modify the distribution, but we also put the inventory description right out next to the item number, so that instead of just seeing the item number and then having to drill in to get more details, you can actually see the item description right next to the item number as you code. Our biggest modification is in the payables transaction entry window. So as you are doing payables transaction entry, you actually get vendor activity over here to the side. And we will see some of this later in action. I'll show a live demo of this, but basically as soon as I put the vendor ID in, I'm getting information over here about that vendor. Any unposted transactions they have, open transactions they have, recent payments, and any item that's in this vendor activity view, I can double click on and it will open that additional transaction for me. So if I'm trying to figure out, what this extra unposted document is that I have, I can go drill into it and see what that is. There are several other window modifications. We don't go over all of them in detail here, but they are all very similar to what we were just looking at. To handle all of our PowerGP Online functionality, we added an additional area page. So this is a copy of the navigation list that goes down the left-hand side of your GP install. It's native to GP. We've just added this PowerGP Online button so that it opens our area page, and this is what our area page looks like. We have information on our PowerGP Banking out here. This is all PowerGP Banking. We've got our multi-dimensional functionality, and we've got the import, along with the batch reset down here. So if you ever get a stuck batch, and we'll look at that here in a minute, you can go down here and reset that. But just know that to find pretty much all of the functionality we have our own area page that's easy to navigate to and to navigate in. So with that, let's go on to our batch reset tool. So again, where we just saw it on that PowerGP area page, you have a batch reset button. When you click on the batch reset button, this is the window that it brings up. And it's as simple as check the batches you want to reset and click the reset button. Please note that before you use our reset, you should go in and try and fix the batch with a GL batch recovery window. So use the native GP functionality first, and then, because usually when you use the native GP functionality, what it does is it tries to reset the batch and it puts it back into the originating module, where you can then go and run an edit list on it to see what's wrong. So that's the cleanest way to fix it. But if it just keeps getting stuck and it won't put it back to the original module and it won't tell you what's wrong, then you can use our batch reset button. And what it does is it's basically updating behind the scenes. If your partner has ever said, well, I need to go in and update the SY0500 table or the SY0800 table, that's what our batch reset does, is it goes in behind the scenes and it sets the mark to post button and the batch status, both of them, it sets them back to where you can then start again with that batch. Okay, this will save you many support tickets. Well, I guess it depends on how often you have batches that get stuck, but if you do, try this first and then let us know. Okay, so next is MDA budgets. So MDA stands for multi-dimensional analysis. It is a native function to GP, and I like to call it light job costing. So what MDA is built to do is to give you a little extra tag that you can associate to a GL account. So for example, I might have a GL account that's called auto repairs. But I actually want to track the auto repairs based on the vehicles that I'm doing the repair on. However, I don't want to set up an entire segment in my chart of accounts to accommodate all of my vehicles. So I can go in to multidimensional analysis, set up a code called vehicles, and then I can set up the supporting options under vehicles for, my Ford F-150 and my forklift and my cargo van, whatever vehicles I have. And as I am recording transactions against that auto repairs expense account, I can then go into a sub window and say, okay, this was for the cargo van, or this was for the forklift. Out of the box, GP does not have budgeting functionality for MDA, so we added that. So in the car example, if I wanted to know that I'm going to have to put new tires on the cargo van in October, I could set up a budget for that so that I know I'm going to have an extra $1,000 expense hit in October for the cargo van. And you'll see in this case, we've got an analysis group called department and an analysis code called accounting. But in our example, this account here would be auto repairs, and then the group would be autos, and the code would be cargo van. So that's how this would look. And then we would just set up. In this case, maybe they're budgeting for $200 a month in insurance. So those kind of things, you can set the budget up for the multidimensional analysis. That is not available in GP natively. That is our functionality. And then you can do an inquiry on that. So we built an inquiry so you can actually see actuals in that account for that code versus the budget. So again, just a nice little feature we've added. I actually like multidimensional analysis. Most people don't use it very often, but there's a lot of uses out there. So next is our PowerGP Import. I mentioned that we added import functionality. And we have, I haven't counted these, but there's about 20 of these, 20, 22, something like that. So if you look at the list, you can import journal entries, you can import bank transactions. In accounts, you can import posting accounts and unit accounts. You can import fixed assets. We can bring in vendors, vendor addresses, payables transactions, AP manual payments, customers, customer addresses, salespersons, receivable transactions and cash receipts. In inventory, we can import items, price lists, and inventory transactions. And in payroll, you can pretty much import anything it takes to get payroll up and running. You can import your employees, your pay codes, deductions, benefits, federal taxes, state taxes, local taxes, direct deposit. You can bring in payroll manual checks and payroll transactions. So when I say that every one of these windows has an import button at the top of it, that is true with the exception of fixed assets. And fixed assets does not have an import button at the top. There's other navigation. So I think our next slide is navigation. Yep. So again, all of the windows, like vendors, will have an import button. That is a PowerGP import button. If you are not in PowerGP, you won't see that. If you do not have access to the PowerGP Online windows turned on, you will not see these options. So all of our functionality that we've built is controlled by native GP security. So if you want somebody to be able to do imports, you have to go turn that on so they can do the imports. And to see that, you have to give them access to the modified window that we have that is our PowerGP vendor maintenance window. So top of the window is one of the ways you can access that. It's very handy, especially if I'm in a vendor address, looking at vendor addresses, and I want to take a look at those or import new ones, I can. Again, from our area page, we have an import box or an import option. Once you open the import option, it brings up this box and you can choose the series, whether you're importing cards or transactions, and then based on whether you're importing cards or transactions, you'll get all of the import options related to that. And then at the top of the navigation list, we've added import functionality as well. So for fixed assets, you would need to import via the area page or via the navigation list. Fixed assets is the one window that doesn't have the import at the top of the window. With the fixed asset, with the import, with any of the imports, from this previous window, if I were to open purchasing cards, inventory, and click open, I would then get, and this one's accounts, not purchasing cards, but I will get a window that looks like this. In this window, I can browse and grab a file, or I can actually start keying data directly in this window. The fields that are required are in red. If I'm not sure what this layout is as far as creating a file to setting up a file to import, if I click template, it will give me a sample file of the layout required to import into this window. So every window has a sample file available and attached to it. When I am updating cards or importing cards, so again, accounts, vendors, customers, items, I have an option to allow updates only. So if I just wanted to maybe come in and change a posting type or the decimal places or something like that, I can do that. And then in conjunction with that, I can tell it to ignore blanks. So again, if I'm not going to fill in all of the fields and I only want it to update based on the populated fields, I can do that. As I go through, let me see if my next slide is what I think it is. It is not. As I go through the process and bring in a file or key data, I have a validate option. So when I get all of my information populated, if I browse out and grab a file, it will populate this window for me with that data. I can change something in here. I can edit it as I go. If I click validate, it will tell me if there are errors. So at the bottom, I'll get a little message that says, these will turn into green check marks or red X's or yellow warning signs. And if there are any red X's for something that won't import or yellow warning signs, I'll get a message down here that says you have so many warnings or you have so many errors, and it'll tell you exactly what's wrong. this posting type is not right, this typical balance isn't right, whatever it is, it'll tell you exactly what's wrong before you do the import. So you have the ability to grab a file layout, fill it full of data, populate it in here, validate the data, and then import it all. And it's really very easy to use. Okay, moving on to our PowerGP Banking. What PowerGP Banking does is it lets you set up a connection directly with the bank. So using your banking, your online banking credentials, you can then log into PowerGP Banking and download transactions directly from the bank. And from there, you get to decide what you want to do with them. Are you going to, if the transactions are already in GP, and so you want to do a matching process, you can. We have an auto match process, and we have a multi-match process. So auto match does exactly what it sounds like. If I'm trying to reconcile my bank statement to GP, and I believe I've got all of the transactions already in GP, then auto match is going to match everything that it can. It goes through a process where it first looks at check number and amount, and if check number and amount match, it marks those transactions as reconciled. Then for anything that's not a check, it looks at the date and the amount, and anything that is a plus or minus 10 days and the same amount, it will match unless there are duplicates. So if I have two transactions, maybe I've got one dated the 1st and one dated the 3rd and they're the same dollar amount, we don't auto match that because we don't want to make any assumptions. So, but that's the logic that it uses for the auto match. And we have a multi-match functionality that is great for, I entered 5 checks in GP, but it went into the bank as one deposit. So now when I go to clear that, I want to match these 5 checks against that one deposit, and that's what multi-match lets you do. So the process of using PowerGP on banking starts with the financial institution setup. So I'm going to come into this window, I'm going to click on Add Institution, and it's going to walk me through a little wizard that is going to prompt me for what is your bank ID, what are your bank credentials, and once you get through that wizard, it's going to bring up something like this for a bank. This is at the top one is a credit card, the bottom one is a bank. And I'm going to take that bank and I'm going to link it to my GP checkbook. So I've already got the checkbook set up in GP, and now I'm telling it this bank account links to that checkbook. And so when it goes to reconcile, it knows what transactions it's looking at between the two. For a credit card, I'm linking it to a vendor. So as I try and reconcile these transactions or import these transactions, it's an import for credit card, not a reconciliation. It's gonna know which vendor to link that to. I also have the ability to, when I'm adding one, to add a nickname. So if I wanted to name this something differently, something more meaningful, I can. After the fact, if I want to change the nickname, I can edit it. If I no longer use this in PowerGP Banking, I can click the X to get rid of it. And if by chance I change my logins for my credit cards or my banks, then I can come up here and do revalidate credentials, and it will walk me again through the wizard where I can re-enter my name, my credit card, my bank credentials, my login credentials. So all of that is stored behind the scenes in a token. Your login information is stored tokenized. We don't keep that information in our system. We don't have your login name in our system. We don't have your password in our system. We have a token that has been used to go and retrieve data when you are ready to retrieve it. So the second part of the PowerGP Online Banking is to download the transactions. So when I come into this window, I'm going to pick a financial institution. I can put in a date range, and I click download, and then down here I see what transactions I have. So downloading them is getting them from the bank and putting them in our staging tables. They're not yet in GP, they're not yet in GP or PowerGP Online Banking. So when I get ready to import these, I would click the check boxes over here. I can do mark all or mark none. And then if I can click download. And when I download those transactions, it writes it to our table and gets ready to figure out what the next step is. If there's something in here that I don't ever want to include in this service charge maybe, then I can actually exclude transactions. And downloaded transactions will show on this downloaded tab. Excluded transactions will show on the excluded tab. So it's just a good way to organize and manage which transactions are going to flow into the PowerGP Online Banking. Once they are in the PowerGP Online Banking, the next step for banking is, and by the way, this would be the same. The financial institution could also be a credit card. So I could go in and download credit card transactions from this window as well. And then the next step for banking is transaction matching. And I will show you this live. This is where we have the auto match, the multi-match, all the functionality that links GP data to what we're doing now. And then you also have the ability, if, like, for example, this transaction, and we don't have a full view of it, but if this transaction is not in GP, I could actually import that into GP as well. So it'll create a bank transaction for me directly from this window. For the credit cards, once I've downloaded the credit cards, I can come in and cherry pick which ones I want to import. And what it's going to do is it's going to create a batch with the leading is whatever the vendor ID I used. And then I've got a date parameter in here as well. And I have the ability to update the description. The description will populate based on what we downloaded from the credit card, but I can update it if I want to. And then I can start coding account numbers. So Uber Eats is really not a realized gain, but obviously this is sample data, and we just kind of grab whatever account seems likely when we're doing our testing, or not even likely, just handy. But PowerGP Online will actually remember. So it's got a learning feature to it. So the next time I download for this credit card, if I have another transaction for Uber Eats, it will automatically bring up this account and link it. I can change it on any given transaction, but it will remember. So the more I eat at Uber Eats, Qdoba, and Chick-fil-A, the more it's going to remember what accounts those need to be coded to. And then what it's going to do is it's going to bring in this batch, and it's going to have one AP transaction in the batch for whatever vendor we have linked to this credit card. And each of the distribution lines in that transaction are going to hold this information. So you're going to get the coding and the distribution lines from this window when you import credit card transactions. All right, here is a more detailed view of our transaction matching window. So again, you'll see at the top, once I've picked what checkbook I'm working on, as I start going through this process, this links to the native Dynamics GP bank reconciliation functionality. So if I have started a reconciliation for this checkbook in GP, then it's going to populate that statement date for me. If I haven't started one for this checkbook, then when I put the date in and save it, it will actually create one in the GP bank reconciliation window as well. So the two are completely intertwined. I can come out and put search criteria in here if I want to put a date range. If I'm looking for a specific amount, I can tell it to display the marked or the unmarked. So that just helps me whittle down, especially if you have a lot of transactions in your bank, you can use that to whittle down what you've got. But if I click auto match, it's going to run through that process I described earlier. Check number, dollar amounts, dates, and dollar amounts, and it's going to find everything it can possibly match and match it for you. Again, multi-match is going to let me do that. I need to put 5 deposits or 5 transactions in GP and match it to 1 deposit. That's how the functionality works, and we will see this live here in just a bit. Okay, this is where it then feeds over into PowerGP Online Banking. So I think, oh, I thought I had a video link to that one. So anything that I match in PowerGP Online Banking ties into the native GP bank reconciliation window. If I come into this bank reconciliation window and I unreconcile something, it goes back into that PowerGP banking transaction matching window and it unmarks it there. But most people, what they do is they start with PowerGP Online Banking. They get through all of the auto matches, all of the multi-matches. They import any other transactions that need to be imported. And as you import from that transaction matching window, it auto matches them. So normally when we come into this window, you have to come into the bank reconciliation window in GP to go ahead and finish and click reconcile. But normally it's already auto reconciled. This one is not, because it's not a great sample data, but it's already auto reconciled with the exception of maybe some little transaction that didn't clear for the right amount or something like that that you need to just adjust a little bit. So again, fully linked to the native GP reconciliation as well. Now we have PowerGP Connect. And what PowerGP Connect is it is a RESTful JSON API. So think about it like another integration tool, except that you're able to push data into GP without ever opening GP, or actually without even opening your remote desktop session. And the same, you're able to pull data out of GP without opening the remote desktop session. So if I can get all of the demo gods to align, we'll see if we can take a look at this later. But this is kind of the guts behind it. You can expose any table, any SQL table, any SQL view, any of the native ones that are out there, we've already exposed for you. And then we've added some functionality in here. So the backbone for this is native GP eConnect functionality, which is a integration tool that's provided by Microsoft. But with the native eConnect, if you wanted to import an AP transaction, you would have to import the transaction details, and then you would have to import the header, and then you would have to import the distribution, and then if there were any tax information, et cetera, there are about 5 or 6 tables that are updated every time you do an AP transaction, and with eConnect, you would have to separately code for each one of those. So we added a wrapper that makes it very logical to code an AP transaction. It kind of joins all of those pieces, all of those eConnect pieces into one easy to use functionality. So when you log into PowerGP Connect, this is what it looks like. You have the ability to go in and set security. So within the user list, you can tell which users can get to which companies. If you have multiple companies, you can say, you know, John can get to the company A and company B, but he can't get to company C and company D. And then within that, next, you can limit him to certain objects. So John may be able to see financial details like accounts and GL transactions, but he may not be able to see any of the payroll information. So each of those objects can be secured in this window. And this is kind of roughly what our objects look like. So again, we've got get account budgets, get account period balances, get accounts. Anything with a get in front of it is going to be doing exactly that, getting data. Anything, I don't think I have any in my screenshot, but if it says set, S-E-T, set, then that would be an import. You're going to push data into GP with any of the set ones. You'll notice at the top we have a weird one that's named underscore KJ vendor items, and that would be a custom SQL view. So somebody created a custom view and brought it in here, set it up as an object in PowerGP on PowerGP Connect. And so that means that you can use that to pull vendor items out of GP without connecting to GP or using the RDP to get in. So like I said, we'll see this in action a little bit later. Just showing you though, you have multiple series in there. You have the ability to look at stored procedures, tables, and views. And once you get to one you want to use, you just copy that URL, and that's how you use the data. That's how you access the data. All right, we also have a video library. If you go out to PowerGPOnline.com, and then I believe it's under resources, we have recorded videos. So let me see, I got the link in here. There you go, PowerGPOnline.com/video-library. So if you wanted to start looking at a more detailed view of Connect or some of the other products we have, there's recorded videos available on demand for you. We also have, which is not PowerGP Online specific, but we have our on-demand training. I have not added a slide in here for that yet, I don't think. Nope, I have not. But we also have on-demand training available if you're interested in that. The way those are set up is by module. So if you go in and you want to get GL training, you buy the on-demand training for the GL module, and it'll walk you through all the GL setup windows, all of how to create counts, how to do journal entries, how to copy and paste. Every functionality that's available in the general ledger is done as a lesson. They're all done as very short lessons. Most of them are 2 or 3 minutes. I think the longest one we have maybe 15 minutes. And we have training for accounts payable, accounts receivable, general ledger, bank rec, and I'm going to be adding more as we go. So if you're interested in that, let us know. We'll get you the link to that training site. They are all very reasonably priced. For $99, you get access to an entire module for 3 months, and you can watch it whenever you want, how often you want to watch it, etc. We have also added recently the ability to manage your data usage. So one of the components within PowerGP Online that you pay for is how much space you use on the servers. And that space is made up of, if I look over here at my little data usage viewer, Everything that's on the D drive is your databases. These are your Dynamics GP databases, your company databases. The L drive is the log files related to those databases. And then the B drives are any backups we have. So you get charged for the space you use for your data. And then you also get charged for space that is anything you've saved out in a shared data folder, or anything that you've saved in on the user's desktop or in the user's documents. Most of the time, user data saved is pretty small and not a big component. You get 10 gig of space for free, and that usually covers all of your user data that you saved. But we wanted to give you the ability to see this and manage it on your own. So on your desktop, you will have a shared data folder. If you double click in that shared data folder, you will have a client apps folder. And in that client apps folder, you will see one that's the data usage viewer and one that is the backup manager. When you double click on those apps, backup manager will open this window, and any backups that are in there you can delete. These are not our nightly backups and our disaster recovery plan backups. These are backups that someone has made on a one-time basis. Most often, it's right before an upgrade. We'll go in and make a backup before the upgrade, or your partner will make a backup before the upgrade. And so you just want to make sure to go in and monitor that and clear out any old backups. In general, these backups are from 2020, right? The logic I have is it's kind of like when you move and you've got those 6 boxes in your garage that you never touch. These are those boxes. If you go back to them at this point in time and you have to go back and restore data from 2020, that's going to be a nightmare. So getting rid of these backups, you just click on them, tell them to delete it, and they're gone. Once you click refresh, you'll come over in this data usage viewer will go down as well. So when you're in the shared data and you open the data usage viewer, you will get this. I've sorted it by space used so I can really quickly see what's available, where the most space is being used. I've got a total usage in this sample world of 33 gigabytes. I can click export, and it will export this list out to Excel for me so that I can get down to the nitty gritty of who's got what and why do they have stuff and how do we need to get rid of it. And then I always want to talk about, in our PowerGP Online world, this big red log off button. Everybody in our environment has this button. And this is important because the way that remote desktop works is as you log in, it caches and remembers things. So if you have, let's say, 5 users in your system, and those users get in and they open GP and they open Management Reporter, and maybe they open a web browser, although you should do that not in GP unless you really need to, and not in the RDP. You should open web browsers and Excel workbooks and all of that on your local workstations as much as you can, but sometimes you need those, so you open them all in here. At the end of the day, you've got all of this stuff opened, and you just click the X in the top corner to close out your remote desktop. All of that stuff stays open, and that cache just keeps growing and keeps growing. And then you multiply that times 5 users, 10 users, 15 users, however many you have in the system, and everything will start slowing down. It'll just start creeping. So after about 1 or 2 days, if you haven't logged off properly, you yourself will start to notice the slowness in the system. After about 4 or 5 days, everybody who's using the system will start to notice that slowness, and it just gets worse. The longer people stay in and don't log off properly, the slower the system gets, because it's just trying to remember all of that stuff and trying to remember it overnight. And, I don't know about you, but I have a hard time remembering things overnight. And this computer's doing it for 5, 10, 20 users with, 15 programs open each. So the best practice for your PowerGP Online machine is, at the end of the day, close out of GP and then double click this log off button, and it will shut down the remote desktop for you properly, and it will clear out any caches, and you will have better operating functionality within your PowerGP Online remote desktop. Okay, we're going to skip the portal because I believe that's getting revamped. If you're in PowerGP Online, you also get some Rockton functionality. So the biggest ones are the toolbox, and we're not going to go through all of the features here. We do have a recorded video on all the Rockton functionality. So back to that video library, you'd want to go find all the Rockton functionality. But Rockton has some options for logging users off if they don't log out properly. It checks to make sure they're not busy posting or doing anything like that, and then it goes ahead and closes them out of GP. So it's got a lot of features along those lines. You would want to just go through all of the toolbox options and see which ones you want to turn on. As you open your PowerGP Online, when you open GP, this box might pop up Mentor. And this one's actually quite handy if you're not quite sure where you want to look for something. So in this case, I think I typed in, if I typed in like payables, it would pop me up a whole list of where I could possibly enter or inquiry or do reports on payables. I would probably want to shrink that down a little bit, but let's say cash receipt, which has fewer options. It's going to bring me up the cash receipts entry window. It's going to bring me up cash receipts inquiry. It's going to bring me up cash receipts reports, and it's going to be in the, and it gives me a list that I can double click on and find what I'm looking for. And then we also have what's called Smart Fill. So as you start doing data entry, Smart Fill searches for multiple fields. In this case, I was doing a GL transaction and I typed in the word dues and it brought up all the accounts that have dues in the description. It's going to look through multiple fields as it does that search, and you actually can define more searches. If the ones out of the box are not enough, you can define specific searches in the Smart Fill setup. This is available for Premium, Premium Plus, but it is not included in BYOL. So if your contract is a BYOL, which stands for Bring Your Own Licensing, normally meaning you own GP on-premise before you came into our cloud, so you just brought your on-premise licensing into our cloud, then you don't get the Rockton pieces included for free. But if you're on Premium or Premium Plus, you do. And with that, I'm going to hop over into software and take a look at some of these things. We only have about 20 minutes left, so we'll see how far we get. Okay, so I'm already on our PowerGP Online area page. So, but you know, if I were back in my normal, I just logged into GP, I'm on the home page, then I can navigate down to PowerGP Online from here. I can do my budget maintenance for my multidimensional analysis that we looked at, and my budget versus actual down here. Those are the same inquiries we looked at before. My batch reset tool down at the bottom. If I had any stuck batches they would show here, I would select them and hit reset. And import. We're going to spend a little bit more time on import. But before we come back to this, I want to sidetrack myself. I'm going to go over, just because I want to show you the modified window for transaction entry for payables, because that was the one with the big modification on it. So again, as I am typing, I'm just going to pull up an existing transaction. But because of the vendor ID, it's going to show me what I've got over here in unposted payables, open payables, and recent payments. And again, I can click on that and it's going to open those transactions for me right there as I go. So I brought it up in the back here. So that's a great way to be able to see what's going on with this vendor in real time as I'm entering a new transaction. This transaction, Americharge, is actually one that got imported through our PowerGP Import tool. So if we pop over and look at the distributions, you will see that we've got whatever that description was is in here. And so the Spur Bar and Grill Park in Park City, and then whatever we coded it to. This came in from that import functionality, or from that PowerGP Banking credit card import. So we'll save that. And then just so you can see this kind of live as well, I'm going to go to Financial. And we're going to go down to, oh, actually, that's not where I want to go. We'll go to Accounts, just so that you can see across the top of Accounts where our import options are as well. So there's the tail end over here. If I click on this, it's going to open our import window. And again, that window gives me the option to go browse and grab a file, or just start typing data in here directly. One other thing that I don't have in the slideshow is the fact that we built logic into SmartList for our imports. And the idea behind this is that you can quickly get a set of data that already meets the file layout. So if I go into Financial, and down here, I've got PowerGP Import Accounts. If I click on that, it's going to build a list of accounts and this format matches my import format. So I could pop that out to Excel, make any changes I wanted to, save it as a CSV file, and import it right back in because it's already laid out that way. So again, if I'm looking at fixed assets, right, this is the file layout for fixed assets. I could take any assets that already exist, pop them out, make the changes I want, and import them right back in. So all of our imports that are related to master records have this ability built in with SmartList. And we'll go ahead and go out to our PowerGP Online option and take a quick look at an import just to show you. Let's do purchasing and transactions and payables transaction entry. Again, just to kind of quickly show you the import. And the template button up here, this is, if I click on that, it will download a zip file that will have a sample file in it. I'm going to go browse and grab a sample file. Let's see, payables transaction sample file. And when I import this in, it's validating that data. That's what it's doing at the moment. Okay, so you can see the X's over here, right? Those are not going to fail. This one is already validated and will come in. Let's see if we have any warnings along the way. We don't. They're all either good or they're bad. But you'll notice down here, vendor document number, the payables transaction does not balance with the credit and debit. If I click see all messages, it's going to tell me all of my documents that have issues. So this document, I don't have a valid vendor ID associated with it. This document, my debits and credits don't match. This import is set up to, you can enter both the debit and the credit if you want to. If you don't want to enter the debit and credit, you can enter just the offset and it will assume the purchasing side of it or the AP side of it. So in this case, you'll notice I don't have any AP accounts in here. I've got it set up to pull only one. And I'm not sure what's off with my debits and credits. I actually think I added some decimals behind the scenes that it doesn't like. But at this point in time, if I click import, it will bring in this one transaction because I've got nice green check marks on that. So we'll go ahead and import that. And all three failed. So it didn't like something in there. Oh, not a valid account number. So I'm not going to sit here and mess with this. I will show you though, that was this transaction down here. If I needed to go out here and change that account number, I could. So I don't know what my account string is. I'm not going to look it up right now, but I can change it on the fly as we go without having to go back, pull the spreadsheet back up and edit the spreadsheet. In this case, I'm going to close out because we're just doing a little demo. I'm not going to go through our financial institution setup wizard with you. Just know that we've already got several banks and credit cards set up in this demo world that we use. And again, if I needed to revalidate after changing my credentials, and you'll notice my screen looks a little bit different. It's because we've added new functionality, which I do not have in my slideshow yet. But there are a few banks where they have what are called treasury accounts. So instead of just your standard online banking, they have treasury accounts that require additional login functionality. And it's not compatible with the tool that we use to validate the bank information. So we've added an option to be able to manually create an institution. And once you manually create the institution, you can then set up a file format. So based on the files that you can download from the bank, you can come in here and set up a matching file format so that the system knows how to read the file from the bank. In this case, again, I could edit or delete these and revalidate credentials. And then once I get everything set up, I could go down to the download transactions. Normally, you set the financial institutions up though, and then we navigate to download transactions separately. I'm not going to spend a lot of time trying to download transactions and show you how it works, but the gist is you pick the bank, you pick the date range that you want to download for, either since last downloaded or custom dates. You click download, and it goes and grabs them, and then it asks you which account are we talking about, and it's going to show you those transactions. So again, I'm not going to run through that process completely, but you can get the idea of how that works. Once you've downloaded them, then you can choose which ones that you want to download and which ones you want to exclude. And you will see I've got 12 downloaded that I've previously downloaded out here. So if I had excluded any, they would show under my excluded tab. And if I had any new ones that had just been pulled in for review, then they would show in here. Once we get them downloaded, then we start matching. Okay, so we have a reconciliation in process, and I know that because the date populated for me. I'm gonna go ahead and submit that. And then you're gonna see all the transactions. Everything on this right-hand side is something that was entered into GP previously. Everything on the left-hand side is something that we just downloaded from the bank. I do have the option on the left-hand side to click and import this into GP. So when I do, I can change the description. I can say who it was paid to and received from. I can pick what type of transaction it was. If I'm telling it it's check, it wants a check number. And then I can pick the account that I want to code that to. And from the account standpoint, I can actually start typing, let's just say this is dues. So I can start typing words and it will find accounts for me. And then once I get that all coded, I click import, and that brings that into the GP bank transaction table. Assuming that there's nothing wrong, if I had a bad date or something, it wouldn't let me import it, but it would tell me what was wrong. As it brings it in, you'll notice it auto matches it. I'm going to go ahead and click on unmatch all here, just to show that process of undoing it, but also so I make sure that something will show up when I click auto match. Now my auto match, I'm going to click on that. And again, it's going to start looking at check numbers and check dates and dollar amounts, and it's going to match everything it can possibly match. So if there's something in here I don't want it to match, I can just click the X. If I do want it to match, I click match transactions. And it goes out and does the matching for me out here. Again, if I wanted to see unmatched transactions or started trying to find some smaller transactions or specific dollars, I can put some criteria on there. Our multi-match looks like this, where I can go in, and this is not going to multi-match, but I'm just going to click a handful of things. I could pick 4 or 5 transactions on the GP side and match it with one transaction over here. And you'll see it tells me I've got $2,000 selected over here, I've got $1,200 over here, and the difference is $795. So until that matches, it's not going to let me click on a button. Once the dollar amounts match, then I've got a multi-match button down here that lets me match those transactions. So we're just going to go ahead and close this. We don't want those to multi-match. Again, this feeds over into the GP bank reconciliation process so that you can then go finish it up over there. And lastly for today, we're going to look at our import for credit cards. And hopefully there's some data out here. And there isn't. Let's see if there's any out there for last year. Nope. If there were, we would see a list of transactions. We would be able to import those transactions, and when we click to import them, we would be able to code them. And then like we saw earlier, that goes in and creates an AP transaction where the distribution is broken down by all of the information we choose in this window. All right, go look at PowerGP Connect. So I've already opened my PowerGP Connect. It opens as a website. So this is my sample company website. When I go to log in, you will have, there's an admin user, and then every user that you set up will have its own, I don't have any idea what I just typed. Every user that you have for PowerGP can have its own Connect login, which means that you can set up security for those users individually as well to see what objects they can or can't see. There we go. So when I get the login credentials correct, then you'll see all the companies that I have access to. I'm going to pick the one we've been working in today. Okay, so again, I'll have a list of users for my PowerGP system, and within that I can tell whether they're active users or not, and I'm able to, at the user level, give them access to certain companies or access to certain objects. I'm going to go back to the home screen. We're not going to look at all the security in detail, just know that you can lock it down. We're going to go look at our object list, and I'm just going to pick get accounts. So once I see what I want, I could thin this down by using selection criteria. If I knew I was looking for something in sales or purchasing or inventory or project or HR, then I could whittle this down by series. If I knew I was looking for a stored procedure versus a table versus a view, I could whittle that down again. I'm going to go with views, and we're just going to do this get accounts. When I get over here and hover over it, I can copy that URL. Now, I'm going to go back to my home page, and you'll notice there's add new object. So again, if I create a separate view or stored procedure, it's really easy to go in here and just add a new object. Tell it what the name is, what series it is, what's etc. And then that is now available in the RESTful API to be used. So how would you use this? I'm just going to give you a very simple example. Out in Excel, I'm going to go to data, and we're going to get data from the web. Okay, and then we're just going to paste in that URL that we copied. I'm not sure if it will validate me or not, because I've done this a lot of times. If this is the first time I've done this, it's going to ask for credentials, and it's going to want those credentials that I use to log into PowerGP Connect. So now I have this in here. I'm going to convert it to a table. Okay. And then I'm going to tell it to use the field names that we want, the ones that are actually in the file. And then I'm going to close this and load. And that has just gone and pulled the data right straight out of GP into this window for me. So imagine doing this with GL transactions and then doing a pivot table on it, or sales transactions or sales customer balances and doing pivot tables on it. The flip side is I could change the data in this spreadsheet and use the set. There should be a set version of that as well. Let's go back to my object list. Set. So normally there would be a set option where I could, actually that would be a stored proc. All. Set filter. So then I would be able to go back and using these other ones, create the documents back into. Now that's going to take a little programming on your side for somebody to be able to call the URL and push in the parameters they need via JSON file format. But just so you know, it's just that easy to use our API. Please keep an eye out on our PowerGP Online website. I think it's PowerGP Online /webinars for any upcoming webinars. We do this webinar once a month, so if you need anybody else in your company to see it, this is available to see once a month. And then we also do what we call Power Hours, which we do about once a month. Now, we don't have one for every month, but close, where we just go in and give you some extra tidbits of information about GP functionality. We've done smart lists, we've done SRS reports and Excel reports. So keep an eye on that webpage, because I'm always adding new sessions that we want to do, new quick little free Power Hours to get you a nugget of extra information. Thank you guys for joining us. If you have any follow-up questions, let me go back over to my slide deck. You can email me or support at any time. And yeah, if you come up with any other questions, just let us know. Thank you very much for joining us.